They tell you love will save you, that someone will arrive to complete the puzzle of your brokenness, that in their arms you will finally feel enough, that love is the answer. Soft, gentle, healing. But what if it isn't? What if love, as you've been taught to crave it, is not salvation, but sedation, a numbing lie dressed in poetry, a fantasy built not on strength but on fear? Nietzsche would not sell you that lie. He would ask, what if the love you dream of is the very thing that keeps you from becoming yourself? What if true love is not about being held, but about being seen, even when you are hard to look at? This is the brutal truth, and only those ready to face themselves will endure it. You say you want love, but often what you want is relief. Relief from loneliness, relief from self-doubt, relief from the burden of being responsible for your own life. So you search for someone to carry that burden, to give you identity, to reflect back a version of yourself that feels lovable. And when you find them, it feels divine at first, because they fill the hole, they silence the ache, they complete the sentence you never dared to finish. But what you don't see is that this kind of love is not love, it is escape, the fantasy of completion. You've been fed the myth, you complete me. But Nietzsche would scoff at this idea. To seek someone to complete you is to confess your incompleteness, your unwillingness to stand alone. It is to outsource your sense of wholeness, to become spiritually dependent. And dependency, no matter how beautiful it looks, is always a kind of slavery. The fantasy of completion keeps you passive, waiting, hoping, dreaming, instead of becoming. No one can complete you, and if they could, you would be less, not more. Love begins only when you stop looking for someone to finish the work you refuse to do. Why romantic love often masks fear. So much of what you call love is really fear in costume. Fear of being alone, fear of facing yourself, fear of having to define your own worth without someone else's eyes reflecting it back. And so you fall, not in love, but in need. You crave not connection, but validation, not intimacy, but escape. Nietzsche warned of this. Love that arises from fear will always devour itself, because it's not built to hold truth. It's built to protect illusion, and illusions rot from within. How idealization kills intimacy. You don't fall in love with the person. You fall in love with the idea of them. You build them up, perfect, beautiful, savior-like. You blind yourself to their flaws, their shadows, their humanness. Why? Because if they are perfect, then you are safe. But idealization is a slow death. You can't love someone you've placed on a pedestal. You can only worship them, or eventually resent them. Nietzsche knew to truly love is to see clearly, to gaze into the eyes of another and say, I see your cracks, your chaos, your contradictions, and I choose to stay awake. That is intimacy. Everything else is theater. The need to be needed versus the courage to be whole. It feels good to be needed. It makes you feel important, desired, necessary. But the need to be needed often masks the fear of being irrelevant on your own. You pour yourself into another, hoping they'll never leave, because if they did, who would you be? This is not love. This is self-erasure. Nietzsche asks for more. He calls you to wholeness before union, to stand alone, not as a fortress, but as a flame, already burning, already bright, so that if someone comes, they do not become your light. They dance in it. This is the first cut, the first confrontation, the first unmasking of the lie that love is about being saved. True love, Nietzsche would say, is not soft. It is sharp. It slices through illusion. It demands strength, clarity, and the willingness to love without vanishing. Love often wears a gentle face, but behind the tenderness, something else pulses. Not always cruelty, but will. Raw, unspoken, often denied. Nietzsche understood love not as selflessness, but as a dynamic of power. And until you confront this, the desire to own, to mold, to bind, you will never love freely, because what you call forever may be a cage, and what you call devotion may be disguised control. Love as will to power, and what that really means. Nietzsche's will to power is not about domination in the vulgar sense. It's about the soul's need to expand, to express itself, to make the world reflect its inner truth. When you love, You do not merely admire, you want to shape. You want to be seen, needed, chosen. This is natural, human, but when unchecked, this desire becomes possession. Not, I love you as you are, but I love the version of you that fits me. Real love must begin with this admission: I want to shape you. Only then can you choose not to. How we disguise control as care. You say you want what's best for them. You say you worry, you only want to protect, to help. But look closer. Sometimes help is a way to make them dependent. Sometimes concern is a leash. Sometimes sacrifice is a quiet form of manipulation. Nietzsche pulls the mask off. Wherever I found a living creature, I found the will to power, even in love, especially in love. We must ask, is your kindness a gift or a transaction? Do you care or do you control? Love becomes dangerous the moment you stop questioning your motives. The silent violence of dependency. Dependency is not intimacy. It is slow suffocation dressed in closeness. When your identity is tied to someone else's presence, you are no longer a lover. You are a hostage. But we romanticize this. I can't live without you. You are my everything. It sounds poetic, but Nietzsche would say, it is decay, because when you cannot breathe without another person, you have abandoned the most sacred task of existence, to stand alone. The overman does not need love, and therefore can love purely. Dependency is not proof of passion. It is the absence of sovereignty. When sacrifice becomes self-erasure. Yes, love requires compromise. Yes, it requires giving. But there is a threshold, and once crossed, sacrifice becomes self-erasure. You forget your own desires. You silence your truth to keep the peace. You bend until you forget what it feels like to be upright. Nietzsche would rage against this. He would say, if your love demands the death of your becoming, it is not love. You were not born to disappear into another. You were born to stand beside another as an equal force of becoming. If love asks you to shrink, say no, because the soul that dares to grow will never fit in the hand of someone who wants to hold it too tightly. This is the brutal truth. Love is never just love. It is fire, it is mirror, it is power. Only when you own that power and refuse to abuse it does love become sacred. Love is fire, but most of us try to contain it, to keep it warm, manageable, safe. And so we build boxes, rules, expectations, contracts. But fire doesn't stay in boxes. It either burns the walls down or it goes out. Nietzsche knew that love is not the opposite of freedom, but most people love as if it were. And thus the war begins. Can you love without owning? To love without owning means to look at someone and say, I choose you, but I do not need to possess you. This is terrifying, because possession feels like security. It gives the illusion of permanence. But Nietzsche would say, he who possesses cannot truly see. When you try to own someone, you no longer love them. You love what they represent to you. You stop seeing their becoming. You start fearing their change. You grip tighter and call it love. But love that grips becomes a cage, and no soul can breathe in a cage for long. The paradox of desiring and releasing desire pulls you in. It says, I want you, do. But love at its highest must also say, I release you. This is the Nietzschean paradox. To love fiercely without trying to freeze the beloved in place. You must allow them to evolve, to become different, to leave if that is their path, not because you don't care, but because your love is stronger than your fear. Weak love clings. Strong love witnesses, and witnessing is the most sacred form of intimacy. Boundaries as a form of sacred respect. Love without boundaries is not freedom, it is fusion, and fusion kills distinction. Nietzsche would warn you, do not dissolve yourself in the name of connection. A boundary is not rejection, it is a sacred circle drawn around your becoming. When you honor your boundaries and theirs, you say, I love you enough to remain whole. This creates a love not of collapse, but of clarity. Two beings, two flames, not one smothering the other, but both rising side by side. Why jealousy is the shadow of weakness. Jealousy is not proof of passion, it is proof of insecurity. Nietzsche saw jealousy as a symptom of a deeper illness, the belief that you are not enough on your own. And so when love threatens to shift, you panic. Not because they are leaving, but because your self-worth was never yours to begin with. You placed it in their hands, and now you fear its loss. But true love, strong love, says, if you go, I remain. Not out of pride, not out of coldness, but out of integrity. Because the only love that is worth receiving is the one that is freely, fiercely, and consciously given. So this is the war: freedom versus attachment, self versus union, possession versus presence. And Nietzsche's verdict is clear. If love costs you your freedom, it is not love. It is a beautiful prison. You say you want love. But have you ever loved yourself? Truly, not by pampering, not by flattery, but by looking into the mirror and refusing to turn away when it hurts. Nietzsche saw self-love not as comfort, but as confrontation, because you cannot become anything real until you face what you are. And most people, when faced with their true reflection, flinch, becoming the one you seek. You long for someone to see you, to understand you, to choose you without hesitation. But Nietzsche would ask, have you chosen yourself? Because all the love you chase outside, the safety, the admiration, the forgiveness, it all points back to a deeper hunger, to be whole within. You think love is finding the right person, but the truth is brutal and beautiful. You are the person you've been waiting for. Until you become the one you seek, every romance will be a repetition of abandonment, not because they leave you, but because you've never fully arrived for yourself. Why loneliness precedes authentic love? There is a solitude that Nietzsche called sacred, not isolation, not bitterness, but the alchemical silence in which you begin to see yourself clearly. This solitude burns. It strips you of distraction. It brings up everything you've buried beneath busyness and relationships. But without this fire, self-love cannot emerge. Because true self-love is not found in comfort. It is born from sitting with your shadow until it stops scaring you. Only then can you offer love that is not hungry. The soul doesn't want safety, it wants transformation. You say you want peace, but your soul does not want peace. It wants transcendence. It wants to evolve, to shed, to break and become. Self-love is not a state of calm. It is a volcanic process. It's tearing down what no longer fits. It's saying no to what feels good, but keeps you small. It's learning to walk alone, not because you have to, but because it makes you strong. Nietzsche knew that love, at its deepest, is not about soothing. It's about awakening, and sometimes awakening hurts. Love is a mirror, not a medicine. Most people use love like a drug, to numb, to escape, to feel okay again. But real love is not medicine. It's a mirror. It shows you what you are, the beauty and the brokenness. If you run from that mirror, love becomes fantasy. But if you stay, if you let love reflect back your truest self, then something sacred happens. You stop needing to be perfect. You stop begging to be fixed. You start loving from fullness, not emptiness. This is the alchemy Nietzsche points to. When self-love becomes strong enough, every relationship becomes a choice, not a craving. You cannot love anyone truly until you have learned to sit in a room, in silence, and not abandon yourself. And when you do, you stop chasing love. You become it. Most people want love to be soft, predictable, gentle, easy. But Nietzsche didn't believe in that kind of love because he didn't believe in that kind of life. Love, at its highest, is not comfort. It is a trial by fire, a union of two sovereign souls who do not merge but magnify each other. This is fierce love, unapologetic, wild, true. It does not beg, it does not bind, it does not betray the self. It calls you forward or it walks away, choosing someone without needing them. Need is not love. It is fear dressed as desire. When you need someone to complete you, your love becomes a contract, full of silent demands and invisible debts. But when you choose someone, freely, fiercely, without expectation, that love becomes a fire that does not burn the house down. Nietzsche would say, only the one who does not need love can love purely, because need contaminates. But choice sanctifies. Choose them, not because they make you whole, but because they recognize your wholeness. Staying real over staying comfortable. Most relationships fail not because of lack of love, but because of lack of truth. You hide, you shrink, you censor your desires to keep the peace. You become what they want, or what you think they want, and slowly you disappear. Nietzsche would call this a spiritual crime, because the highest form of love is not one that feels safe, but one that demands truth, even when it's inconvenient. Stay real, even if it costs you the relationship, because any love that asks you to be less than you are is not love. It is a negotiation of fear, and you are not here to negotiate your soul. How to love without losing yourself. You can love deeply, fully, viscerally, and still belong to yourself. This is the Nietzschean ideal. Not merging, but mirroring. Not fusion, but flame beside flame. You hold your center, you speak your truth, you walk your path, even when they don't walk beside you. And in that strength, love either rises to meet you, or it falls away. But either way, you remain whole, because you never gave yourself away to begin with. Let go or burn. Call to action. This is the brutal truth. Love will either liberate you or it will consume you. And the difference is this: whether you love with fear or with freedom. So let go of the story that someone will save you. Let go of the need to be needed. Let go of the lie that love requires sacrifice of the self. And in that letting go, you may finally meet someone who doesn't complete you, but stands with you in the fire without flinching. Call to action. If this truth struck something raw inside you, good. Let it stay raw. Let it stay open. Watch again. Reflect. Ask yourself, do I love from fear or from fullness? Then share this with someone who's been living a beautiful lie, and begin the work, not of finding love, but of becoming someone who no longer needs to beg for it. Because when you become that, love will find you, and it will not ask you to vanish.